Hello again. Welcome back to Air Job Boss TV. Today is a continuation of our interview question and answer series. And today the question is, tell me about a time you learned something from a subordinate. Yeah, not a difficult question, but one thing that's very important about your answer is that you're not just telling them that you can learn from a subordinate or you have a anecdotal story at one time you learned something important from a subordinate. In major airlines, they have very detailed CRM and threat and error management models. And those models dictate that half of the crew finds things that go wrong. So if you are the captain, which hopefully in this scenario in your answer, you are a captain, you're a commander of that aircraft, you're talking to either your first officer or someone who's lower in rank to you, you have to realize that you are not any more important in the threat and error management process than that person is. So by virtue of that model, it is imperative that you learn something from the subordinate. You always have to be open to them telling you what's wrong, critiquing you, and making corrections, okay? That is very important. So you want to tell in your answer that you understand the theory of crew resource management and threat and error management and the value of that person, not only anecdotally or once a day, continually judging your actions. So you're going to demonstrate, you're going to make up you're going to tell an honest story, not make up a story. I'm going to make up a story. You're going to tell an honest story of how this person gave you advice and corrected you, and you agreed with that advice, you followed that advice, and you thank them for that to encourage them to continue doing that, okay? Now, you could go into the training scenario. Oftentimes, you're moving through training with somebody who's been in an airplane that you haven't been in or something like that, who is junior to you, but I would leave it to a real-life experience in the cockpit. So let me see if I can come up with the scenario, fictitious scenario, and I'm going to try to drop in those words, those core competencies, those company culture and values, and try to answer the question. Because as I've said before, they are writing down your answer, and they're not writing down your answer. They're writing, did they hit on our company's values? Did this hit on this core competency, right? Or our mission statement or our company culture. So let me see. Okay, so here's a make-believe story. So the question is, tell me about a time you learned something from a subordinate. Well, just the other day I was coming into Los Angeles, and we have vertical navigation on the airplane I fly, in which the airplane would calculate descents, time of descents, and take into consideration crossing restraints and speed restrictions, and then formulate a descent. And many times we would use the automated descent function, vertical navigation, and follow it down. Well, I was new on this airplane, and the first officer had a lot more time on this airplane than I did. And I thought that I could simply manage that nav and it would complete the descent normally within all the parameters. And normally it would do so. But they had been into LA before, and they knew that I could not achieve this descent profile without slowing up and losing energy much further out from my destination than I anticipated. So as I'm going through the briefing, I'm briefing the star and briefing the approach, and the first officer said, "Are you really going to fly this airspeed to this point?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I had intended to." And which they said, well, if you carry that much energy in the top of descent, it's not going to work out at the end. Even with speed brakes deployed, you're not going to be able to slow and configure by glide slope interception. So most people, and me too, I slow to 270 knots at this point, and then that gives me enough margin and takes enough energy off the airplane that I can make this descent profile successfully. In hearing so, I knew that I had very little familiarity with this plane, this star at this airport. So of course, I then said, thank you so much, and I programmed the initial descent speed to be 270 knots. And as a result, that was correct. As a matter of fact, if you have any tailwind at all, it's going to be more difficult to even do it at 270 knots. Now, we had a very light headwind, so the descent did go well. And I then told, after we got on the ground, I said, I want to thank you for that point. of interest. And as we move through this trip, if you have any more information associated with this kind of technique or anything at all, you obviously have a lot more experience than I do, and I value all your inputs and your critiques of what I'm doing, because I'm not going to get any better unless you tell me how to be a better captain and a better pilot in this airplane. So I really appreciate you bringing it up, and I thank them. And you know, I was all the time, I'm very open to critique of others, especially subordinates, because I realize that for threat and error management, that person is going to catch half the errors at least, maybe more, especially if I'm new relative to somebody who's had a lot more experience, because there are many times when a first officer has more experience than the captain. So keeping that line of communication up and fostering that rapport and that relationship and allowing them to make inputs as to your techniques and ways you can improve is really important factor of leadership as a captain, I think. Okay, so there was a lot of leadership, rapport, communication, that kind. You're going to start spitting out these words, and that's where professional one-on-one preparation can help you. If you have somebody that understands how they're critiquing you, and then listening to your answer like in a mock interview, they're going to tell you you're not using enough good words. You're not using the words you need to use, or you're including too much that's not important and not enough that is important, and kind of focus you down into delivering those words based on your own story. And your own story, everyone has their own story. So it's really important for a professional preparer to take your story and just improve upon the delivery system. Yeah. If you want to learn more about that, you can click the link below at airjobboss.com. Also, feel free to email me at info@airjobboss.com if you have any questions associated with my service in advance. Anyway, share, like, subscribe. Thank you so much for tuning in at Air Job Boss TV, and I'll see you on the next video.